before we start the interview, can you give me a correct spelling of your first and last name and your title as you would like it to appear on the lower third that goes on the video?
Okay. Name's Chris Mignogna, Mignogna, and I'm the operations manager for UPHS anatomic pathology processing.
Okay. So Chris, tell us first of all, where are we today and what happens here? Just general overview, what happens, what's going on around us?
Well, this is 3020 Market Street, the histology processing lab for all of UPHS. We receive tissue samples from Pennsylvania Hospital, Presbyterian Hospital, and Hospital University of Pennsylvania. These are the specimens that are taken from surgical procedures and grossed in our gross room and cassetted and delivered here for processing and the creation of slides for diagnosis by the pathologist.
Tell me about, seems to be a very busy place.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like it's probably busy all the time. I'm sure it kind of goes in waves. What are some of the processes and procedures that are happening here? And what happens to the slides when you're done with them?
So there is a lot going on here. So we actually receive the tissue samples and they have to be processed, meaning they have to have the fluids removed. So tissue on our bodies full of water gets replaced with formaldehyde. And from the processing, tissue processors, the formaldehyde's removed and replaced with paraffin. The paraffin supports the tissue so that when we cut the hair-like, they're so, stop them for a second.
Pick it up. So,
the tissue sections are cut thin as a hair and then mounted on a slide and stained for microscopic diagnosis by a pathologist. So once the tissue comes, it's processed in a tissue processor, embedded in paraffin so that it can be placed on a microtome for cutting the 5 micron thin tissue sections. We then stain those with a routine stain, a H&E stain, which will allow the pathologist to get a preliminary idea of what may be the problem. And then they can call back and request either special stains or immunohistochemistry or molecular testing that we would then process from there.
And also, what is the process? Why is there a laser involved? That's very important. And then what happens when you're finished with everything?
So there's many processes that are going on here. So we have the receipt of the specimen. We have to actually run more like an assembly line here, considering that we process the tissue for all 3 hospitals. And so we have a laser slide printer that is interfaced with the LIS, the Lab Information System. And this laser slide printer is what drives the work throughout the lab. Since it's interfaced, the interface will take the orders that the pathologists have placed at the hospital at 6 Founders, Pennsylvania Hospital, and Presbyterian Hospital. And we can take the information from the Lab Information System, interface it to the slide laser, and all the work that we're going to do for the next 5 hours will be etched into the glass slides, and the slides will be ready after the tissue comes off the tissue processors.
And what happens when you're finished with that slide?
The slides are then packaged up and returned to the hospital that made the request, whether it be Pennsylvania, Presbyterian, or HUP.
And are they kept? Are they stored?
Slides are taken to each hospital, distributed to the pathologist that will be reading and verifying the case. They'll be, once signed out, held at each hospital for a designated amount of time for other future diagnoses. Many of the patients that come here are being seen for 2nd and 3rd times, and these slides need to be kept on site so that they can be reviewed with more current cases to see the progression of the disease state they have.
How aware are the people that work for you here of kind of their mission to support the patient? It seems like what they're doing is very important, even though it's hidden. Most people never see this, and yet what happens here, I'm sure in some cases, is actually literally a matter of life and death. So are people kind of aware of that mission? Is it something that drives them? Is it something that you're...
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody here is well aware of that every piece of tissue that we receive is a patient. So in essence, we see thousands of patients a day, not hundreds, because every specimen produces several to potentially hundreds of blocks. And from those hundreds of blocks come thousands of slides. So in a day, in a routine day, we could receive up to 500 specimens, and then we're going to put out between 3,000 and 5,000 slides every day.
Are you ever closed for business? Tell me about the cycle of life.
We're 24/6, and on the seventh day, we're 8. And we're open 365 days of the year. And we do stat processing for transplant kidneys, transplant livers, anything and anything that comes down. We're here.
And the people that work here, what are they like? What are their skill set?
People here are great. Their skill sets, all of them are, very mechanically inclined, as well as able to very minute, delicate hand-eye coordination. The paraffin sections that they create are 4 microns to as small as 3 microns, which are thinner than our hair. So they're picking up ribbons of these very thin sections and producing slides with that. Everybody here has a great eye, because again, all the slides that are produced here need to be QC'd and screened by the technologists that are creating them. So they have a good idea of both the mechanical and the scientific of what's going behind what they do. They do a multitude of tasks that are technical, semi-technical, and then very technical. So they have varying backgrounds.
And the technology that they use here seems to be pretty extraordinary. I'm assuming everything is state of the art and that it is.
Yeah, like as you noticed, our laser slide printer to our immunohistochemistry stainers, they're all very state of the art, all less than 5 years old, and the best in the industry. The microtomes that we use, which is the bread and butter of what's done here, are the same as they've been for the last 30 years, but all of them are new and working order.
And it's a fairly new facility?
Yeah, we've been here since December 2008. This is all new construction of a previously used building, now renovated for our use, and it's specific for our lab. And it's all been designed with ergonomics and both ventilation and ergonomics, so that we don't smell any of what's going on in here right now, which there's plenty, so it's good.
What do you think, Daniel? I love the answers. I see how we can edit stuff together really, really well.
Can you maybe say a sentence or two about the patients, that even though this is behind the scenes work, that for everyone the patients are still on their mind, that you kind of are an integral part of the hospital system because of that, even though you don't actually get to see the patients face to face? Is there something you can say about that, about your team?
So you see pieces of patients, but I'm sure you see them as more than pieces of patients.
Yeah, absolutely. For most of the staff here, we've been trained, whether it's on-the-job trained or from a community-based or university-based program, that every one of these numbers is associated to a patient. And again, we see hundreds and sometimes thousands of patients a day here, so we're all acutely aware that these specimens, are absolutely positively the lifeblood of the health system, as well as our department, and we all take the utmost care as if they were, each and every one of them, a family member, a loved one, a friend.
Yeah, that's perfect.